one of the things that I think is going on is that you've got used to your mind going to unhelpful places. Be that the kind of health anxiety, be that looking for and finding the negative and emphasizing the negative. And there's kind of a lack of kind of ability to direct that thinking that just sort of gets caught in these patterns. And it's like, the more that we do anything, the better we get at doing that. And you may have come across the concept of neuroplasticity, where you train your brain, right? And it's like, it sounds like you've wired your brain towards the health anxiety. Well, that sounds like it's improved, which also shows that these things can be changed. And one of the key things with neuroplasticity is that neurons that fire together wire together. So you have a thought, you literally wire your brain a certain way. And if you actively work to change that thinking pattern, it takes a while, but over time, you actively rewire that thinking process. So I think part of it is that there is this mental, and it's not like a lack of discipline, because you clearly have discipline in your life, but it's like, it's got too much power in a sense. Like it's been allowed to sort of run away. So I think there's that
it's
piece
very
of
powerful.
the jigsaw.
That's good.
Yeah.
Perfect word for it.
Yeah. So I think that there's that piece of the jigsaw. There's then this place where it sounds like you've learned to go to your mind as a way to get away from your feelings, which makes sense in the context of the childhood stuff that we talked about. A price of that strategy, there's two main prices to that strategy, one of which is anxiety, because when the mind runs too fast and it runs away, it's like radio station anxiety. We find stuff to tune into because that's what the brain is doing. But the other consequence is the consequence to our emotions, because our emotions go a bit numb, because all of the energy, like another way of putting it, where attention goes, energy flows. Excuse my kind of cheesy lines, but it's like your energy ends up in your mind, which means there just isn't much happening in your heart and in your belly. And then it's like, it leaks out in like, mixing my metaphors here, another way of thinking about it, like all the emotion gets sort of shoved into a black sack that you sort of gets bigger and bigger, and then you walk around, it's kind of a burden. And one ends up feeling a level of emptiness because it's all in there, but also almost depression because you're being depressed by all of this stuff that you're carrying around. And then every so often something happens and like the lid comes off and it all comes blurting out. Like it sounds like it happened a bit with your flatmate, and then it all goes back in again. And the pathway to working with it has a few different pieces, but one of which is we want to take back some of the power in your mind, like to install some discipline in some of the thinking processes and to not overindulge those patterns, because we recognize that the more energy you give to those thoughts, the more power they get. And there's a certain practice of learning to train that thinking a certain way. But in doing that also, connecting them more into the feelings and actually working with some of the feelings and the emotions that are there. And we don't have to go into it right now, but I think there's probably also a piece in there around relationships, because in a sense, to really feel love and joy and connection, one has to be open-hearted enough to also feel sadness and loss and hurt. And when we've been through a significant grief, that often has an impact that our heart closes because it's a way of protecting us. If we've been around a particularly dominant parent, again, our heart closes because we have to protect ourselves from all of that. And in a sense, the way that a lot of these things work is that we don't set these things up intentionally. They get set up by the circumstances and the experiences. And then we just do them for a lot of years and they just become normalized. In a sense, they become the person that we take ourselves to be because that's what we've always done. And I think the potential of a process like this is we're starting to put a spotlight on these things and go, okay, that's how it's been for the last 20 years or 30 years, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And this goes back to what I was saying to you right at the start. Part of it is awareness, like that awareness is really important. But part of it is also having the tools and the strategies to work to retrain and to change those patterns of thinking. And I think going back to what you were saying earlier around the CBT, for example, I think CBT has a place, but one of the limitations is you're working very much in a rational, logical way. And I think the issue here is not actually a rational, logical issue. You're too rational. Actually, the issue is more
Yeah.
you're too in the thoughts
Yeah.
and not enough in the feelings, and
Yeah.
CBT just won't touch that.
Yeah, definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. Yeah, it's always felt like I'm jumping through hoops and for the sake of it, and then they're like, yeah, and then you feel better, right? And I'm like, no. So yeah.
You know, I also think, and I don't know the answer to this piece, and I think it will become clear as we work together. But I'm reflecting on what you said around struggling with homework, for example, doing CBT, and the question I'm asking myself, I'm not sorry asking you to answer me if you have an answer, great, but is how much of that is you weren't doing it because actually it wasn't working, as opposed to weren't doing it because of another reason? Because what I'm hearing is someone that is very disciplined around work, around money, two areas that a lot of people really struggle actually to be disciplined around.
Yeah.
Is basically disciplined around, use of recreational drugs and alcohol. Like, I hear you'd like to drink a lot less, but I'm also really hearing you say you can go and you can do stuff and have a great time and recognize your limits and stop. So there's discipline that's there as well. So what I don't know the answer to, and I think it will become clear, and whatever the answer is, we'll work with it, is if you have tools and strategies that feels like they are working, will you then be able to discipline and follow through? My guess is you will, but I think that will become clearer.
Yeah, no idea at the moment. But yeah, that's the goal. Yeah.